Good afternoon, good afternoon. My name is Scott Heiferman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Meetup. You know, at Meetup, we bring people together in real life, we connect people. So I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment right now to say, find someone around you that you don't know, and talk to them for a minute. Say why you're here. Introduce yourself. Hey, I'm Scott.
Scott, very nice.
Hi.
We're doing it.
Hey, how are you? I'm Scott.
Exactly, yeah. I think we're actually interviewing you later. So I'm head of marketing for the festival.
Oh.
Joe runs the online magazine that
Cool.
so it's nice to meet before.
Cool. I think I'm on the.
It's still on the line.
Yeah.
It's amazing call as well. At some point in my life, I would like to play some music and speak in a call like this.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so continue that in just a few moments. By the way, this is a great. It's a great thing. I literally have sometimes given speeches at places where this is true. I flew from New York to give a speech somewhere. I didn't really feel like speaking, so I stood up. I said, "Go talk to each other," and I left. And you know, people had a much better time talking to each other than they probably could have gotten from hearing me yammer on. But alas, I'm gonna yammer for a moment. Who here is a member of a meetup? Okay, that's almost all of you. That's great. All right, today is July 12. 2027. It's about 3 p.m. I'm going to tell you a story. Much has happened these past few years. 2017 was 10 years ago. I'm not going to reminisce about Angela Merkel or Donald Trump. Do you remember them? So a lot can happen in 10 years. From 2007 to 2017, the world went from no smartphones to a way of life for billions of people. And now in 2027, much is different than 2017. Let me show you by taking you through 24 hours around the clock, around the world, a day in the life of 2027. I'll introduce you to 8 people in 8 cities. Okay, so here we are. It's 3 p.m., July 12, 2027. We're in Berlin, a Monday. And there's a woman at a tech meetup who started one of the great companies that exists in 2027. You haven't heard of it because most of the great companies that exist in 2027 haven't even been started by 2017 yet. And in 2017, this woman wasn't a programmer. She became a programmer, and that's when she started in 2017 going to tech meetups for women learning to code. Her favorite part wasn't the talks and the great speakers and being in the audience. Her favorite part was the Monday evening gathering of Monday afternoon gathering of a dozen women who would help each other, coach each other, learn to code together. They supported each other, they laughed together, and she still, 10 years later, meets up with this same group, and she's the mentor to a different circle of a dozen women. Now, it's 6 p.m., And we are in Houston, Texas, USA. No applause for Houston? Okay. I'd be shocked if anyone is from Texas. And there's a meetup of women who want to run for office. Now, this woman, she actually happens to be the mayor of Houston. And how she got to be the mayor of Houston is she's been going to a meetup for women wanting to run for office for many years. On Mondays at 6 p.m. Every month, they get together, and actually, let me back up for a second. She hadn't even thought of back then, she didn't even know for sure that she wanted to get into politics. She was working for a technology company, working on some dumb VR app that had really good technology, but she had this thing burning inside of her to want to change, to make a big impact on people's lives. So she met up twice a month, Monday evenings, and they support each other, they hear each other, they advise each other, they counsel each other, they push each other, they pushed each other to run for office. And now she's the mayor. These kinds of meetups of people helping each other run for office are happening in thousands of cities everywhere. And it's more important than ever because of all the divisiveness and what has happened in the past decade. Here we are now in 2027. She's still a part of this meetup, even though she's the mayor, and even though she's no longer running for anything. But let's move to 9 p.m., Lima, Peru, where it's another woman going to a running meetup, but it's not a running for office meetup. This is a running in the park with your feet meetup. She is a mom of 2, and they run at 9 p.m. She works all day, she puts her kids to bed, and she really, really wants to wants to run at 9 p.m. But given what has been going on in the economy and all the things that have happened in this past decade in 2027, it's especially unsafe to run outside, perhaps especially for a woman. And is that offensive? I don't know. But to run as a pack of women is what she wanted. So this meetup came together, and every Monday night at 9 p.m., this pack of women run. They run faster because they're a pack. They run longer because they're a pack. And guess what? It's not even just about running. It has turned out with these women meeting up every Monday. They're there for each other. They've helped each other through various crises in life that have nothing to do with running, but they've come together, and here they are. And it's fun. Yes, there's also, by the way, I'm sorry, this is like the third women's only meetup. Don't worry, we'll get to some men in a moment. The future is female, and the instinct for Stammtisches, how do you do it? Stammtisches. Help me out. Stammtisch. A gathering of regulars that emerged in 19th century Germany is now a big thing in 2020. It's a real thing in 2020, and it's not just women, and it's not just Germany. It's global, and it's about everything. This is a hallmark of what's happening 10 years from now. So fast forward, it's midnight now, and we are in Baghdad. There's a man going to there's a man going to a language learning meetup. It's the only time he can do it. And then crazy enough, because everyone's on the network, there's enough people in his part of Baghdad to be able to get a English language learning meetup going at midnight. And it's a safe space to learn English. Now, I say it's important to him for it to be a safe space, not only because he's embarrassed by his bad English and he's just getting started, and he really needs to be made to feel comfortable and not embarrassed. But also because he wants a safe space because there's a stigma amongst his friends and family in Baghdad around learning English for whatever reasons. Now listen, he's learning a language. There are great apps in 2027 for learning languages. There's Babbel is huge. There's Duolingo. And you know what? They've got super advanced AI. And there's also, you can do VR face-to-face conversation with people in 2027. But there's something about real face-to-face. There's something about actually getting together in that cafe at midnight in Baghdad with a dozen other people, as he does every Monday, and practices his language, and they can see and touch and feel each other, and it's real. By the way, do you know what I'm saying? Is there something about why aren't you all just dialing? Why aren't you all just watching this on online? Why are you here? Is there something about real, about face-to-face? Yeah? Good. Okay. Now, I should also mention, he dreams of moving to Australia someday. That's why he wants to learn English. So let's fast forward. It's 3 a.m. in Australia. And there's a man at a health meetup for people who are awaiting a liver transplant. Now, there are hundreds of people in Sydney that have liver transplants every year. But guess what? You can't, in 2017, you can't find them. If, God forbid, you needed a liver transplant right now in Berlin, and it would be meaningful to you to look in someone's eye and have that person tell you, I went through it, I had that surgery, and I'm fine, would that make you feel good? No matter how much money you have, you cannot somehow magically gather those people together. And in 2017, you can. So here in 2017, you can press a button and make a car show up, which you couldn't do a few years ago, but you can't press a button and make people show up. That's the world in 2027 is going to make it so you can press a button and make people show up, including the people who are also awaiting a liver transplant or maybe had one recently. And so our friend here in Sydney, he plans to go monthly on these Mondays to this liver transplant meetup, even after his surgery, so he can be there for others. That's the world we hope to have, we're going to have. Now, it's 6 a.m., last two stops on our trip here. It's 6 a.m. and we're in Mumbai, we're in Bombay. And there's a man at a hiking meetup that is about hiking with kids, early morning. And you see, at this point in 2027, it is more the global norm that women aren't the presumptive primary sole parent or primary parent. Men step up. And this guy loves to hike, and he says he couldn't live without this hiking meetup. It helps him feel more alive, and he gets out there at 6 a.m. with his kids on Monday mornings, and it's a favorite part of his week. It's the favorite part of his week. And those people that he's with, they become true friends. Because in his work, in his work life, there isn't much time to make real friends, and he wants to see his old friends, doesn't get around to it. This becomes a really vital part of his life. All right, our last stop, 9 a.m. We're in Beijing, and there's a woman at a drawing meetup. Now, last year I went to back in 2016, I went to a drawing meetup in Beijing where this is how they do it. It was like 15 people, and mostly aged like 20 to 25, and what they would do is they would pick a theme every drawing meetup. This is great. And they would, and this theme was an animal. So you would find a photo of an animal on your phone, and they just sit there, and they would draw their animal. I drew a hamster. And so this woman, her family moved to the city of Beijing a while back. And while they were sort of saved from the hardship of extreme poverty, just like hundreds of millions of people have been brought out of extreme poverty, city life is a struggle for her. And as China has suffered economically in the past decade, before 2027, her work is grueling. And her dream is to use her creativity, whether it's for work or for not for work. She has this creative thing in her heart. And this drawing meetup is a lifeline for her. It's also magical for her to have friends outside of her assembly line. It's really meaningful in her life. She feels alive. This is the last one. We're in Nairobi, and there's a woman at a meetup for healthcare workers. They learn together, they commiserate together, they laugh together. And sometimes it's just drinks, and sometimes it's a book club, but they try to meet up every Monday. And at this Monday, they're meeting up over lunch. It's a dozen healthcare workers in Nairobi. And the talk has turned to why they're not treated fairly enough by their bosses, why they're underpaid, why the system isn't working right. And the talk has turned to how they might stand up for themselves to be treated better. This is how new unions formed 100 years ago, and that's how new unions are going to form in the 2020s. Mark my words. Either people meet up or not. Either they come to feel powerful together and are powerful together, or they don't. Either people meet up or not. So you see, these kinds of communities are a standard way of life for humankind in 2017. All these stories, they do exist in bits and pieces. Every story I told you is actually a bit of a meetup that I've actually, or a meetup or a person that I've gone to and talked with around the world. But the difference here is that in 2017, almost half the world population is going to be a part of a monthly meetup of some sort that is supportive, that is regular, that is a routine, that's a rhythm, that's a part of their life, and it's really, truly empowering. So, and that's just in time and vital because of all of you thought when maybe you were coming here to hear a talk about 2027, I was going to talk about all the space lasers and the jetpacks and the advances in technology. It's the wealth disparity and the climate change effects that are going to be rolling in, and the intolerance that we're feeling now, and the isolationism that is rolling in, and the corruption and the related wars that are going to happen between 2017 and 2027 that makes the great coming together more and more necessary. So not to mention how people have felt even more connected than ever, but feeling less connected, more lonely and less human. They feel less needed than ever because everything's on demand and easy, and because of AI. But here in this world that we want to see in 2027, people feel needed by people. They feel needed by people in these communities. Needed by people in these communities. And it'll be almost as pervasive as smartphones in 2017. That feeling of being needed in a community. At Meetup, we feel we're creating that world we want. Thank you.
Do you want to do one question? Yeah, we'll do one question. So, Scott, what's your biggest failure as CEO of Meetup?
Oh, well, we failed to have 400 million members. We only have 40, and that's a serious failure. Because if you're working on something, some of you are working on amazing things that you should build and make and do, even if it only would be useful to 10 million people or 1 million people or 100,000 people. We're doing something that's a universal human need, and there's network effects. So when more people use it, it actually gets better. So if Berlin only had 100 people using Meetup, it wouldn't work well for anyone. So the failure is broadly. We could be doing something. We could have picked something easy. It's easier to kind of get people to. You can sign up 1 billion people to make it, if you make it easy for people to be a voyeur on their friends' photos, which is a great product, which is an awesome thing to have and do. We're doing something hard, but the failure is generally to not be serving more people.
Cool. What's Meetup's business model?
So we are proudly no ads and been profitable. Off of just simply, so we charge when you start a Meetup, you pay 12 around €5 a month, but Meetup is free to the 99% of the rest of the people.
Amazing.
And with that pays for the company is based in New York. We're about 200 people.
What was the most interesting experience you've had at a Meetup?
Last St. Patrick's Day, I mentioned China. Last St. Patrick's Day, I went to a meetup in Shanghai that was a combo joint meetup of the ukulele meetup and the Hawaiian dancing meetup. So here we were. It was just They were all drunk on St. Patrick's Day, the Irish drinking with the ukulele playing, which isn't necessarily about Hawaiian music, and the Hawaiian dancing, and most of them were Chinese. So it was, globalism at its finest.
There's a tribe for everyone. What's the weirdest meetup group you've ever heard of?
So in Singapore, there are these competing Elvis fan meetups. And they have a monthly meetup where they put on shows amongst each other of impersonating Elvis, but there's two of them and they hate each other. So there's tribalism for you.
Have you ever changed Meetup's algorithms for discovery, for example, to encourage a socially better outcome? How did you do it?
That's a great question. That's a really great question. An example, yes, the example of that is if you just rely on the computers won't suggest tech meetups to women unless you tell the computers, ignore that bias. So it's true. I mean, if our job, our job is to get you, we are trying to optimize the number of people signing up for meetups and going to meetups. And so what algorithmically has happened is if we want more people to sign up, don't show women tech meetups, but we don't do that. So you gotta get in there.
That's amazing. So similar question, to which extent is Meetup's growth and expansion connected to social cultural patterns? How might your platform change a city's culture?
It's interesting. Someone at Facebook once said that they started planting people everywhere just to try to understand how people are different everywhere, and they just basically blew it off and said, and this isn't a dig on Facebook, they really recognize that they are serving a universal human need, and they, to your point, are changing a city's culture. I think that I love this question because we really do see ourselves, and I hope you do too in whatever work you're doing, as a purpose of making the world you want to see, of that that the future hasn't been created yet. So we really, really, really want to see every city around the world alive with meetups. And let me just give I'm trying to help you picture this stuff. By the way, a board member of mine said, you want to paint paradise. It's part of what fueled this presentation I just gave. But you want to think about you want to pick a park. Wherever you live, what's the biggest park? Think of that biggest park. Call one out. Okay, Deer Garden? Tear Garden. What city is that? Here, okay. So imagine Tear Garden, you see a map, and pick an hour of the day. Noon. At noon, you'd look at that map, and at this entrance to the park, there's a running meetup about to start for pregnant women. At this entrance to the park at noon, there's a running meetup about to start for marathon trainers. At this entrance to the park, there's a running meetup going on for people with strollers. And at this entrance to the park, there's a running meetup for beginners who run really slow. That idea of a world humanity doesn't have that right now. Wouldn't it be amazing if that were happening in the world?
Last question, at what point did you know that meetup.com would take off?
By the way, we're not meetup.com. That was 10 years ago. We're just called Meetup.
Meetup.
Yeah, most people use the app, right? Yeah.
So when did you know, what was your tipping point? When did you know this was going to work?
Pretty right away. I mean, which is, but listen, the impossible takes a while. The overnight story we're 15 fucking years old. This isn't the overnight successes can take a long, long time. But I heard the speaker earlier today. You do have to be honest with yourself about if something isn't taking off to some degree, in a fair amount of time, maybe move on. But yeah, when we saw, well, it's funny. Everything that we thought people were going to meet up about, they didn't, and what they did meet up about were things we actually hadn't imagined they would use it for. It's true.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Scott.
Great. Thanks.